So I'm going to briefly address the questions that some of you have been asking me in the lead up to test day in this final week about test day related logistics, what to bring, what not to bring, and then what to be doing in this final week. But then I'm going to quickly shift gears and jump into the actual LSAT questions. I'll get to as many of your questions as I can. I've gotten a lot on reasoning, games, and reading comp, and I'll try to get to most, if not all of them tonight. Tonight's session might run a little bit longer than I usually do. So if you have to duck out early, no worries. I'll be posting the recordings on the Ruzuku website tomorrow. So if you have to leave at 9 o'clock, 1 hour from now, no big deal. You'll be able to catch the recording tomorrow if you like. But of course, if you want to stick around with me throughout the entire session, I'm guessing this will run an hour to an hour and a half altogether, maybe an hour 15 to an hour 30 in total. But I'll just go ahead and jump right in to the test day questions first. And if you have any test day related questions, what to bring, what not to bring, what to be doing in the next week, the day before, the day of, the day after, totally fine. Just leave your questions using the chat function, and I'll do my best to address them and work them into this conversation. So a couple of questions I got from you all in the past couple of days about test day specifically. Those of you taking in June, should I take July as well? Should I register for July now? Should I register for both July and September now? So great questions. And I think there is a certain psychological benefit where if you are taking June, let's say, you could register for July as well, whether you intend to take July or not. Because first off, the best and most conveniently located test centers get booked up pretty early, unfortunately. So if you want one that's centrally located, one that's easy to get to on public transport, registering early is the best thing you could possibly do. Otherwise, you'll have a big question mark or to be determined around where your test center will be, and they won't assign it for a while. So you'll be in this position of wanting to constantly check and see, have they given you a test center yet? Where are you going to be taking it? Will you have to take it somewhere you don't really want to, somewhere that's maybe not ideal? So registering earlier rather than later is always a good idea. And I know it's unfortunate to maybe shell out the $200 when you might not even need that registration, but for peace of mind, if you can afford it, $200 is a drop in the bucket. If it reduces your anxiety over the next couple of months, well worth it. If you're thinking of taking the LSAT in September, or you just want the security of knowing that you're all set for September as well, I would recommend registering for September as well, just in case. And there's something unique about the July LSAT in particular where you can, if you decide to cancel your July LSAT score, you will get a free retake through April 2020. And unfortunately, the July LSAT test scores are not coming back until August 28th. LSAC just announced that a few days ago. So if you're taking July, you won't be getting your scores back for about 6 weeks, which is longer than usual, of course, but they're making you wait longer because they're tabulating the results of the paper LSAT versus the digital for that particular test date. So if you're taking July and you cancel it, September will not be your free retake. Your free retake will instead be October through April 2020. So keep that in mind. But bottom line is that it is well worth registering for the July and September LSATs just for the peace of mind. If you can at all do it, it's well worth just knocking that out, getting it taken care of, knowing you have that secured. Now, questions about the June LSAT test day itself, and of course, these questions apply to any LSAT test date. No hoodies are allowed. It's kind of funny. I love wearing hoodies. They're super comfortable. I always recommend dressing in layers because you never know if your room will be too hot or too cold or anything in between. So let's say you're taking it in June. You might think it'll be too hot because it's the summer, but there could also be the AC cranked up way too high. And if there's no hoodies allowed, what could you wear instead? Well, a regular sweatshirt with no hood on it is totally fine. Maybe some sort of jacket of some kind, a light jacket, a blazer, whatever you want, whatever if you feel comfortable in and feel good in, that's what you should have. But you should bring multiple layers, t-shirt, maybe a t-shirt plus a thin layer of long sleeves plus a sweatshirt on top of that. And then you can take off whatever you need to or put on whatever you need to. But they really will not let you bring a hoodie into the test center. Back when I was taking the LSAT, I actually didn't read the rules that carefully, and I brought a hoodie with me, and they would not let me bring it in. So I just had to stash it somewhere and hope it would still be there when I came out at the end. It still was, luckily, but they won't let you bring it in. They have some sort of test security concerns about someone maybe hiding the answers in the hood itself, or maybe it's to make sure it's really you taking it if the hood kind of obscures your appearance. So keep that in mind. Other question I got, does it matter if you're the first one at the testing center or not? It doesn't really matter. They won't let you in until they decide to let everybody in, which is usually going to be around a half hour before it's starting, something like that. I'd say you don't want to get there too early, because then you'll just be stressing, wandering around, maybe talking to other people or hearing what other people are saying, and that could inordinately stress you out. I'd recommend, if at all possible, avoiding other people, staying in your own zone with your own mindset and pumping yourself up. And you never know what other people are going to say. They could they're kind of a wild card. And so I'd recommend avoiding them altogether and just kind of focusing on yourself, maybe meditating, maybe doing a few warm-up problems before you walk in, just staying in your own mental space and being calm and cool and collected, but also pumping yourself up and telling yourself that you've got this, positive self-talk, positive affirmations. You've been studying for months now. You've got it under your belt, and you're just going to walk in and kill it. Someone asked about getting to the test center and taking Uber, dealing with the whole rule that you are not allowed to bring a cell phone. Yes, it is true. You are not allowed to bring a cell phone no matter what. Even if you need it for transportation, or you think you need it for transportation, doesn't matter. They are super strict on this. I've actually heard stories where the proctors trick people into revealing whether they brought a cell phone or not, and then kicking them out. At Columbia University, I heard a story where the proctors asked everybody who had a cell phone, bring it up to the front of the room, implying that they would hold it for you till the end. Then everyone who brought it up, they kicked them all out. I would say that's entrapment, honestly, and it's not really kosher in my opinion. It's not a nice thing to do, but they did it. It's well within their right as the proctors. It is the rules, no cell phones. So what can you do instead? Well, what would you do before cell phones existed? You could look up a phone number of a cab company, write it down on a scrap of paper, bring it with you, call the cab company to pick you up from your house or apartment or whatever. They bring you there. At the end, you have their phone number written down. You borrow the proctor's cell phone, borrow a stranger's cell phone, find a payphone if you can. If you're taking it at a hotel or a university, there's probably a front desk somewhere where you can have them make a call for you just to help you out to get you home, and count on that. Just take a little bit of risk, trust that you will get home in the end, no matter what. But a cell phone, not good to bring with you. If you had it turned off on airplane mode, could you get away with it? Maybe. But what happens if you forget in some way and it makes a noise, or it falls out of your bag and somebody sees it? Just not worth the risk. I strongly recommend leaving it at home no matter what. Any other test day related questions about logistics or what to be doing the day of? I'll be talking a little bit about the day before now, or just in the lead up to it. So feel free to leave questions in the chat. I'll address them whenever you ask them. In terms of the final week now, we've got 7 days before the exam, 1 full week. What should you be doing now? If you are, let's say the semester just ended for you and you're no longer taking classes, you're not working, you could study essentially full time. That's great. I'd say maybe you want to do 2 exams, maximum 2 full-length 5-section exams. You could do one of them on Tuesday, one of them on Friday, and then review the Friday exam on Saturday, rest Sunday, walk in Monday, and kill it. The next couple days, you do an exam tomorrow on Tuesday, you review it on Wednesday, maybe review some weak areas on Thursday, then do your next time exam on Friday, etc. Rinse, repeat. 5-section exams, not 4, maximum 2. And you never want to do multiple exams on consecutive days. That is a recipe for burnout. You definitely want to avoid that. Now, if you're thinking of doing 2 exams at all, even whether you're working or not, the question is, why are you doing these 2 exams? What do you want to get out of them? Let's say that your target score is a 170 and the exam that you took yesterday or the day before was a 170. That's awesome. Maybe you want to end on a high note and not do any more full-length timed exams between now and test day. That is okay. That's totally fine. If you've taken maybe 8, 9, 10 full-length timed exams over the past month or 2, and you've built your endurance, you've built your pacing, you're feeling like you're in a good place, you may not need to do another exam. If, on the other hand, you've only done 5 or 6 timed exams and one of those was 4 sections and you feel like you need to do another 1 or 2, get them under your belt to solidify your endurance and feel good about where you stand, yeah, doing 1 or 2 more timed exams is great, totally fine. Just don't do more than that. And maybe doing 3 sections back-to-back on one day, 2 sections back-to-back the following day is enough if your goal is to work on your pacing. Or if you found that you have a certain weak area, maybe it's a section, maybe it's a particular question type, maybe do only 1 timed exam and spend the rest of your time drilling questions by type or individual sections. At this point, it's really about what you want to get out of the experience and what you need at this point right now to feel good about where you stand. Somebody asked on test day logistics, is a reusable water bottle or plastic water bottle allowed to bring? Yes, you can bring that. I believe the rules say 20 ounces is the volume that they allow. I would always check LSAC's website for details on what the latest rules are. They do occasionally change sometimes. Another thing I should mention, that if you have any questions at all about what to bring, what not to bring, what's allowed, what's not allowed, email LSAC. You have 7 days. They will get back to you if you email them now, most likely. Ask them, is X allowed? Email them. They should respond within a day or 2. When you receive their response, print it out and bring it with you to the test center to show the proctors in the event of a conflict of some kind about whether their understanding of the rules versus what LSAC says. The proctors will ultimately have the final say since they are the authorities on the ground at the test center, and they may not always know the rules accurately, but you have to obey the rules regardless. But at least if you have the printout of the rules, that maximizes your odds of them deciding in your favor about whatever the issue is. Now, stress reduction is a big thing at this point because at this point, honestly, you mostly either know it or you don't. You have a week, you could learn another thing or 2 at this point, but majority at this point, it's about just refining what you already have under your belt. So stress reduction is huge. You don't want to have it all riding on this one test. And given that this is the June exam, it is not all riding on this one test. You have many more exams this calendar year where you could take that exam up and still apply perfectly early in this cycle. You have, aside from June, you have July, September, October, and November. You could take November and still apply perfectly early in the cycle with no issues at all. So don't think it's all about this one test. There are many future test dates. It's also a useful exercise to think about what's your best case scenario and worst case scenario if things go your way or not on this exam administration. So 3 to 5 years from now, if the June LSAT did not go well for you, what would happen? What would your life look like? On the other hand, if things do go well, what does your life look like? And you could maybe think about it as a thought exercise for 30 seconds, or you could actually spend 5-10 minutes in writing down your answers for each of those scenarios. And you may find a lot of the time, it's not as bad as you thought. And you also find it strangely motivating at the same time. So actually consider engaging in that exercise. My students have found it useful to do that and informative. Sometimes you surprise yourself in what you learn in the process. With regard to pacing, remember not to get bogged down. If you're doing more timed exams and timed sections this week, train yourself to have the self-control to not get bogged down on any one particular question or section or game or passage. If anything is kind of getting you mired in quicksand, skip it, come back to it later, trust that you will be able to, and if not, no big deal. That you're better off handling the lower hanging fruit, the easier stuff that you may encounter later in that section, and trust that with a time bank, you may be able to come back to it later. Logistical things, don't wait till the end to bubble. This is on issue for the digital LSAT, of course, but for June, you're taking paper. So bubble at the 5-minute warning, if not earlier. You could bubble question by question or game by game or passage by passage, whatever you like. Have a strategy and stick to it. And if you haven't been bubbling so far, start bubbling in the little Scantron thing because it does take a minute or 2 to bubble. And so you have to account for that in your 35-minute time constraint. What else? A government ID. Bring an unexpired official government ID where the name on that ID matches the name on your admission ticket. If there's misspelling, address that now. People are often not admitted to the test center because of little things like that. And it's obviously super stressful and disappointing if you can't take it because of a little snafu like that. So make sure your government ID matches the name on your ticket. If not, contact LSAC and get that addressed. University IDs are no good. And of course, make sure your ID is not expired. Finally, don't try out anything new on test day. If you've been reading question stem first, it's not the time to suddenly try reading stimulus first instead on logical reasoning, for example. Don't try some totally new pacing strategy on the day of. At least try it out on a timed exam or two now and see how it works out for you. And then finally, like I said, day before, totally relax. Don't do anything at all LSAT related. If you really are stressing out, maybe read something over just to refresh yourself. And then morning of, you do a few warm-up questions, only a few, maybe a single game, a single passage, a few logical reasoning questions. Then you throw them out, walk into the test center and kill it. That's it. I see one more question here. Someone's saying, if I haven't been drilling my exams with an analog watch, only an iPhone alarm, would it be beneficial to wear one on test day to get a grasp of time left before the 5-minute warning? Great question. I do think it's worth having an analog watch for most people because it is useful to be able to time yourself and have a sense of how the section is going. And in terms of your pacing, there is not always going to be a clock in front of you in your field of sight in the classroom. The clock might be behind you, or there might not be a clock at all. Every room is different. So I do recommend bringing a watch, an analog watch specifically, and you can get one for like $10 on Amazon if you have Prime, or you can maybe get one at a drugstore and have it with you during your next timed exam or two, and then bring it with you to the test center. Whether you use it or not is up to you, of course, but there is a certain security and peace of mind knowing that you at least have it with you if you decide that you do want it. Of course, your iPhone won't be allowed. Digital watches are not allowed, only analog. So make sure that you are using an analog watch and nothing else. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.